Hello and welcome to week 2 of the Trick or Treat Treasure collaboration. My name is Lynn, and this week we are all going to be sharing folio projects. And it's been a while since I've made a folio, and I don't think I've ever made one in quite this way. I thought this would be fun. I was thinking about it in my head, like how can you make a really simple folio? And what I thought I would do is make one for gifting A2 size cards. So what I had on screen a moment ago, which I'll show here, is basically how I package A2 cards to give away. Not ones that I send in the mail, like actually sign, but these are more when I donate cards or give them to others for charity auctions and whatnot. So this bit of black cardstock is heavyweight black cardstock. It's 110 pound, and I've cut this piece to 5 inches wide by 11 inches, and along the 11-inch edge, I scored it at 2 1/4, 8 3/8, 8 5/8. And how I arrived at that was basically I want this to be as tall, comfortably, as what I plan to put inside. I gave it a little bit of wiggle room just so that it's not a super tight fit. And what I did was gave myself a 1/4 inch gusset on both sides, and then I have a flap that wraps around on both ends. Now that first piece will wrap around my A2 size card, basically around the height of it, and wrap around the top and wrap around the bottom. My second piece of cardstock, also out of 110 heavyweight black cardstock, it's going to wrap around from left to right in the opposite way. I also cut this piece to 11 inches wide, and this one has to match the height of my folio, which is 6 1/8 of an inch tall. So 6 1/8 by 11 inch, and along the 11-inch edge, I ended up scoring it at 3 1/2, 3 3/4, 8 3/4, and 9 inches. Now, how I arrived at it, I was just sort of measuring to fit along the way, and then I actually measured those measurements out just so that I can give them to you on screen. So this piece here again is 11 inches wide by 6 1/8 tall, and along the 11-inch edge I scored it at 3 1/2, 3 1/4, 8 3/4, 9 inches. And it's important that while both of these do wrap around, one of them needs to overlap so that you have a full closure. And that way your folio can be completely enclosed so that whatever contents you plan to put inside, they don't fall out. So with those measurements in place, now I can just add some nice touches. So what I'm going to do is round all of the corners, and that way we don't have any of those sharp edges. I'm going to do that on both of these flaps, and I'm going to do that with the decorative papers that I will use to decorate this. Now, this is actually great for maybe gifting holiday cards for Christmas if you're not super into Halloween. For this one, I'm going to decorate it with Halloween and maybe put some Halloween cards and tags to gift. And it's going to be really easy to put together because I'm just going to adhere these two pieces to one another. And that way, because it's made of or cut from 110 heavyweight cardstock, it's going to feel really substantial, like really sturdy. The back of this is going to be doubled up with 2 layers of this black cardstock. That right there is going to make it feel very substantial. Plus, I'm going to put a decorative bit of pattern paper on the inside, even though that's going to be mostly covered up with the contents, I still feel like it's a nice touch. Plus, that's going to add a third layer of cardstock to the back of this. Again, that's to really make it feel substantial, to make it feel sturdy. And then on the outside flaps, I'll have decorative pattern paper. Again, just to make it look nice, but also make it feel sturdy so that it can hold whatever you plan to put inside. So for the back, I really want this to be, the two pieces to be adhered very, very well. So I am lining this almost nearly edge to edge with double-sided adhesive tape. I have some adhesive that's on a 5-inch roll, and then I have some that are strips. And that 5-inch roll is just great. It helps you to cover a wide area like this really easily. Now, when this folio is complete, it's going to measure 5 inches wide by 6 1/8 tall and have a depth of 1/4 of an inch. That 1/4 of an inch gusset is basically going to determine, how much stuff you can actually keep inside this. So if you want something a little bit more, with a little bit more space, if you're planning on gifting a lot more cards or something more bulky, you can definitely increase that gusset, but the problem is that you might need larger paper than letter size paper, because this just barely wrapped around with enough overlap so that it's completely enclosed. So just keep that in mind if you do want to alter this, that you want to make sure that in the front, in one of those directions, that the two flaps will actually overlap. So I thought I would, and for the closure, so many different ways that you can have your closure. You could, I actually have this punch that does like sort of half moon punches, and you don't even need to add anything extra. You just punch a couple of ways and you can tuck the top flap into the bottom flap. You could use magnets, you could use Velcro, a lot of different things that you could do. I thought, again, it's been a while since I've made a folio. I thought, well, why not make one of those policy envelope closures? Because it's also been a while since I've made one of those. So all I've done is I've punched out some discs, also from that same black cardstock. One of these is 1 inch in diameter, and the other one is 3/4 of an inch. So basically what I'm trying to do is I am going to stack the smaller disc under the larger disc and glue them together. And that way the policy envelope is basically, it has these discs on the top flap and on the bottom flap. And then there's a bit of string or twine or, whatever have you, that you basically wrap around, both the top and the bottom of these discs. And because it needs to wrap under the disc, having that extra layer or two of cardstock underneath, that's actually going to help give it a little bit of extra space so that that twine can actually loop under the disc. And you'll see what I mean when I actually go to install it. Before I install it though, I need to get my decorative paper on here, because that disc actually needs to get attached to these front flaps. So I've cut my pattern papers down to size so that they are about 1/4 of an inch smaller than the actual flap itself. So for instance, this this top flap, it measures, now I actually decided to turn my folio because I thought I would have this open left to right, but somewhere along the way I decided that I wanted this to open top to bottom. So this top flap measures 3.5 tall by 6 1/8 wide. And then the bottom flap measures 2 inches tall by 6 1/8 wide. And then the side flaps measure 5 inches tall by 2 inches wide. That's what I'm treating as my right flap. And I didn't really, since I was eyeballing this, I didn't really get it centered. The left flap is 2 3/8 of an inch wide by 5 inches tall. So my flaps aren't really, exactly equal. And I think that's totally okay. It's handmade, and I think this sort of makes more sense if you stick to having this be like open like a book, where it's taller than it is wide, and that way you can have for me anyhow, kind of makes sense if if the bottom flap was a little bit taller than the top flap. But I decided to do something a little bit different midway through, and so my inside flaps aren't going to really be equal to one another. These ones right here, because the left one measures 2 3/8 wide, where the right one is 2 inches wide. It's not a huge difference, but it's definitely noticeable. If it bothers you, don't go by my measurements, because it's not going to be centered where you get your left flap and your right flap are equal. I like it on the outside to definitely be, a little bit asymmetrical, where that top flap is a lot wider. So on the outside, I think it's totally fine, but on the inside, if I had this to do it over and I thought about it a little bit more in advance, I would have centered it a little bit better. So all I did a moment ago was I marked where I need to punch a hole through the top and the bottom flaps. You only need to punch a hole through the top and bottom flaps, because that's where we're going to install these discs to have that policy envelope closure. And for my closure, again, a lot of different ways. You could use a brad to attach these discs to your flaps, or you could do what I'm doing, where you use an eyelet. And I've got the crocodile here. I was initially thinking that I might use a grommet. So the difference being that grommets have like a back metal piece, but I used such thick cardstock, and this is going through so many layers. I've got 2 layers in the disc. I've got the pattern paper layer, plus I've got that black heavyweight cardstock. It's quite a lot. So with the crocodile, you just need to make sure that because the crocodile can do multiple different sizes of eyelets, plus it can do eyelets versus grommets, you just want to make sure you've got it set right so that you have the proper settings on the top and the bottom. And then you just push down, and what it does is it just crimps that metal and affixes that disc to the flap. And this becomes a very secure closure. So that's it. That's all we need to install our disc. And then the last bit to finish the closure is a little bit of twine. So I've got some pink twine here that I'm not even sure. This must have been from like a card kit, I think. And because it's got several different colors. So, and it's just like a little sampler, but you don't really need much. So all I'm gonna do is on the, usually it's on the top end where you want to attach the twine. And to attach the twine, all I'm gonna do is just tie a knot around that top disc. So I'm not even double knotting it, because a double knot is going to like make it pretty bulky. All I'm going to do is, because once it's tucked in there, it's going to be really hard to unravel, because it's pretty tight fit. So I just do one little knot, and then I pull it taut so that that knot is completely hidden under that disc. And that's going to create some space under the disc for our twine to loop. And then I just loop around the loose end to completely hide it. And I loop around the bottom and the top a couple of times. And that's how you actually keep the whole thing closed. And you don't really need to have to loop this around a ton of times. You just really need to loop it around maybe twice. I think it's going to be good enough. And then I snipped off my twine. And that's all I think I really need there. And that's the finished project. So not very hard to make. If you sell at a craft fair or you like to give away cards, maybe for the holidays, this would be really fabulous. And a pretty easy project to make too. So that's what it looks like from the outside. You just need to unloop the bit of twine here, and you can open it up and put, in my case, I'm going to put some cards to give away. This could maybe fit maybe 4 cards, 5 cards might be a tight fit. And then you just loop your twine around. You could do a figure 8 around the 2 discs also if you want to be a little bit fancy, but that's it. A really simple folio with a policy envelope closure. Thanks so much for checking out my video today. Don't forget to expand the description box to see who else is on this collaboration, and check out the playlist where we have all of our projects for all 4 weeks of this Trick or Treat Treasure collaboration. Thanks again, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.